The stamp is a genuine Canada 12 penny black, number 3. Is the cover genuine too? That's the question. The 12 penny black is Canada's rarest stamp in terms of catalog values. Um, Used is $80,000 in fine condition. Uh, very fine is 160,000. On cover, it's comparable. So is this what we're going to be looking at? This we're going to look at first at the Eastern auction description and an expertization on a couple of them. The stamp itself. We'll look at the target cancel, and we'll look at this unusual 1 shilling 0 pence manuscript, because that seems to be critical in the whole story. And a 2009 paper by Charles Furby and Charles George Arfken. Those are the highlights of the presentation. So here we see the cover. We'll look at the auction lot description. Here's the front and the back. It's a Bank of Montreal cover. Important. Here's the description. The folded cover from the D.S. Kennedy correspondence. Prepaid from Montreal to New York, sealed at the Tarrant foot. Clear Montreal double arc dispatch. That's what we're looking at here. Just manuscript rated 1 shilling with Arc Canada paid border exchange office hand stamps, all in red. A genuine used 12 penny black on laid paper has been added, but did not originate on this stampless cover, according to the latest opinion given by the Greene Foundation. Displaying 3 large margins and irregular frame, pencil sign Jacobo Buehler. A striking usage of this famous stamp with divergent opinions, and therefore offered on that merit. It's 80,000 for a fine. The estimate was 26,000, 25,000. I paid more than that. Here is the expertization, the most recent one, and Greene issues their certs on pink paper if they are not genuine. So they say it's a number 3. The stamp is used and genuine, but added to a paid 1 shilling stampless cover on which it did not originate. That's their cert. Here's an earlier cert from 2003, bearing 12 penny black laid paper, imperfect, genuine, and an older one from 1975, genuine in all respects, a world rarity. But of course, we all look at the Greene Foundation in Canada as the most widely recognized experts. So that's where it's at. We're going to look at the stamp now itself up close. And we're going to look at particular on this left margin where it's a little bit torn there. And what we do see is doubling here and more doubling down here of the outer frame line. And we also see some doubling of the inner frame line. We look in the right side down in the bottom corner here. What do we see? Again, we see some major doubling of the inner frame line here. And we see a short transfer in the bottom where the transfer die wasn't pushed in hard enough into the printing plate right in the corner. So that's called a short transfer, all part of a reentry. So I took those and sent these scans and more details, other ones. I just picked these ones for this presentation and sent them off to Dr. Jim Watt. And his reply, very short and simple. Dear Arnie, your stamp is left pane plate position 95. So we know where it was on the printing plate. We're going to look at the target cancel now. And here, what we see is these rings. I was a little bit concerned first about these portions, the outer portions of the cancel. And I said, do those outer portions really fit in with the rings on the stamp, the target cancel? And so the circles are there. I let PowerPoint space them automatically, distribute vertically, distribute horizontally, and line them all up. The cancels on the stamp and the cancels on the cover certainly appear genuine. The target is genuine. Okay, the manuscript. This is the fascinating part of it because it's so unusual. If we look just at this part of the manuscript where it looks like it touches the stamp, if we look at this part right here, okay, and now the PowerPoint has a powerful feature that allows us to zoom in right in here. We can zoom in. Gosh darn, does that pen cancel actually come right onto the edge of the stamp? There's a little bit of shading here inconsistent with this line. Interesting, because that's huge. in its importance, significance. The manuscript appears to enter onto the margin of the stamp. Now, we're going to look at this article in B&A Topics, the 12 penny black covers, Furby and Barfkin from 2009. Here, the date is important. And they look at it and do a wonderful analysis of the 6 covers they identified as genuine single usage 12 penny blacks to the US. We'll look at them all, and they presented photos of them, of the 6 of them, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And they described them in general terms. And we're going to look at them in closely here because there are some features of these that are significant in relation to the cover that's under debate. So these are the 6. The stamp was issued in 1851. The earliest here is July 19th of 1852. There's only one from Montreal. Interesting, because the cover up for discussion is from Montreal. They're all to New York. Number 2 to 7 in the table. If mine would be number 1 in the table. Number 4 is in the King's collection. And number 5 has not been seen. Now, this is how it was reported in the paper in 2009. It has been seen since now. It has been seen because in an Eastern report, the Eastern auctions, they reported that number 5 has been soaked off cover, and we'll show about it in a little bit more details. And number 6 here, the one to Hamilton from 1853, was just sold last couple of weeks ago in Eastern's Camellia auction for $192,000, including the buyer's premium. So we're looking at some important materials here. Okay, so let's look at them individually. Here's the first one. Again, D.S. Kennedy cover, folded letter. This is a folded letter, not a cover, sorry. Interestingly, it has a Canada paid 20 cents straight line. And while the stamp, actually, the hand stamp that the postmaster has got a 10 there, and then he manuscript the 20 over top of it. Has a certificate, sold in 89 for, well, 130,000 US. That's cover number 2 from their table. Number 3, Thomas Patton, and it's got a Montreal double arc Canada in a separate page. So we see here that the Hamilton postmasters used the Canada paid. Montreal used a Canada double arc and a separate paid hand stamp. They didn't have a cents hand stamp. $250,000 in 96, according to the paper. I'm only getting that information from the paper. Cover number 4 here, it's been removed, or at least it's addressed to Wall Street, undoubtedly to D.S. Kennedy, because it was on, well, he was an agent for the Bank of Montreal on Wall Street in New York. And there's a lot of D.S. Kennedy correspondence to him. So this is the one that's in the King's collection. Again, the Canada paid 20 cents straight line. And here's another one. Again, the address has been cut out. Again, undoubtedly to D.S. Kennedy is what Arfkin and Kirby are reporting. It hasn't been seen since it says this cover has not been reported since 1911 when Howe's book was published. It may no longer exist. Eastern reports that in the last month or last couple of months that they've done their research on it. It was soaked off prior to 44 and 46, and they identify other buyers along the way. And then it was lot number 5 in a Mike Roberts December 2006 auction. So that's no longer on cover. And number 6, the address is cut out, again, professionally restored. Hamilton double split ring, 1984 certificate. And this is X Siebel, Greene, Welburn, Rose, Siegel, Wilkins. This is the one that has just been sold in the Eastern auctions. Here's another one, another Canada double arc again here. James McMaster, double arc Canada. So the stamp is genuine but has pinholes and has been lifted, cleaned, and repaired, but is believed to have originated on this cover. And a certificate of limited opinion presumed genuine. So those are the 6 covers that Furby and Arfkin found as single 12 penny usage to the US. Then they also talk about the rejected single-use coverage, which is one of them is this one under debate, the 16th of March, 1852. They say it is a genuine stamp. Damaged lower left, yes. Tear upper left with traces of earlier cancel. Does not belong on the single folded letter. They called it a letter. It's not. It's a cover because there's no writing on. So there would have been extra weight to justify the 12 penny rate. 2000 Brandon certificate is good. And we have the other one that's previous where they turned the surface down. There's no details on it. They don't have any pictures on the rejected covers. This was a manipulated proof. Again, presumably a proof. And this one, no details on it. Oh, we're going to look at the traces of the earlier cancel. Well, if there are traces, here we're looking at the target again. There's a little bit of extra ink in here. A little bit of a smudge in here that shouldn't be there. Neither of them should be there. We do see a big black gob down here. Now, that's why I put the specimen there. There's a little bit of black there, but there's way too much. Here, whoops, this one here is definitely shouldn't be there. That's above the E. There shouldn't be any ink there. And there's a little bit of a curve of an arc in here. And then there's a little bit of a curve and an arc in here, but these two arcs don't line up. Are there traces of an earlier cancel? One of the factors is that in this time period of 1851 and 1852, these cancels, the cancels on these stamps were generally very, very heavy. They were targeted. They were big. There's no evidence of any trace of an earlier cancel outside of the hammer. And it was just dirt on the hammer. Entirely possible. So what we've learned from the observations of those covers that are in the paper, there's 4 Hamilton, all with a straight line, Canada and 20 paid 20 cents, where the 20 is manuscript over the actual 10. Neither Montreal nor Toronto used the straight line. Only Montreal and Toronto used the double arc Canada with a separate paid. And the target cancels are heavy, consistent with other earlier stamps. Interesting. So about coming back to the cover under debate, it's addressed to D.S. Kennedy, like 4 others. Bank correspondent. He's an agent for the Bank of Montreal. It is the center of the Bank of Montreal. That supports it. I mean, they would be sending mail to him. We don't know who sent the other 5 or the other 6 covers. There's no data on the senders of those. They do have the double arc Canada and paid hand stamps. It's the only one with the 1 shilling manuscript. Now, it's important that the 1 shilling in Canadian currency at that time, or British currency, was the equivalent of 20 US cents. So in terms of the total postage paid, in Canada, you paid postage to the border as one rate, and then from the border to New York, another rate. In relation to the other covers, this paid the same amount, basically, with the 1 shilling manuscript as being equivalent to the 20 cents, which is what was on the other covers.
Just to understand the rate, do I understand that the stamp, the 12 penny stamp, took the letter to the border, and then the shilling took it from the border to New York? Is that
Yes.
what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. I
Good.
think that's consistent with all the other ones.
So then there would be an explanation for there being both the 1 shilling marking and the stamp.
Correct. It's dated 1852. It would be the earliest single use. So this was prior to anything other than the later ones. There appear to be smudges that cannot be explained. But as I said, if the stamp had previously been canceled, it must have been uncharacteristically light cancel for the period. It's highly suspect that this was, and we'll see in the next slide something else that's important. And the 1 shilling manuscript does appear to go onto the stamp margin. So in summary, in favor, yes. Bank correspondence to Kennedy. Hand stamps consisting with the Montreal mailing. 2003 here, when they issued their certificate, they didn't have access to Kirby and Arpkin's in-depth paper. They couldn't do this kind of work. They were more, so I don't know what they were thinking, but they didn't have the access that we've had now to the information in the paper. The 1 shilling manuscript appears to tie the stamp to the cover, is appropriate for the period, and ties the stamp to cover. Interestingly, as I said, the 2003 says it refers to traces of earlier cancel. VGG removed that phrase when reissuing the certificate in 2024. Opposed, it says 1 shilling manuscript that cannot be explained. Why would there be a 1 shilling manuscript? Hypothesis: did the postmaster put 1 shilling instead of 20 cents because he didn't have a paid 20 cents? Didn't think to overwrite the 10, or was it perhaps the sender paid him? Like, the sender wouldn't have had the 20 US currency with him. He would have paid him 1 shilling and the currency in the currency he had. Perhaps it was the postmaster's assistant who marked it. I delivered this presentation earlier to others philatelists this week, and one person suggested that even just the way the stamp is positioned on the cover, the 1 shilling manuscript would normally be gone up if this was applied afterwards. The 1 shilling manuscript would have been more in the corner. It almost looks like the 1 shilling manuscript is there because the stamp was on there in that space already, and they put that in afterwards, and that's why the 1 shilling comes down through the name of Kennedy. So that's where we're at.
Well, it's all quite fascinating, and we wait with bated breath to find
Yeah,
out.
I took a chance when I saw it in the auction catalog. I said, you know what? I'm never going to get a 3 penny black, 12 penny black, number 3 on cover. That's just not going to happen in any other realistic lifetime. But I will take a chance on this one, even if it is just a genuine number 3, which was confirmed. And so, yep.
Wondering, given what they can do these days with chemical analysis, whether they can look at both the cancellation and those smudges to determine whether they're appropriate for the period or not, or whether they're modern.
Yes, they can. Interestingly, in the same paper, there is another cover described at the end, which was what didn't go to the U.S. But the first 2 times that it was submitted, to the Greene, it received a pink certificate. But the second time, sorry, the first time it got pink. Second time it said the stamp was genuine, but the cover was pink, not genuine. And then they submitted it a third time, and they gave it a green certificate because exactly what you said. They confirmed with their analysis that the ink was genuine from the period. So they do analysis. Why they didn't do it in 2024 for this cover, I don't know. But um,
So I'm assuming that there are other covers addressed to Kennedy from this period that could have been used to put, if it was fake, could have been used to stick this stamp on. So in other words, they would use it.
there's no shortage of I have a file of Kennedy. I've been collecting Kennedy correspondence,
I see. So there's a lot of them that they could have been used.
trying to understand how the rates are.
Mhm.
You mean there are plenty of stampless covers
Correct.
to
Stampless
Kennedy?
covers.
Right. So
He died in 53. He died in 53.
there's also the possibility that a prior cancellation could have been washed off, or at least, or perhaps mostly washed off.
Right.
You mentioned that if this is a prior cancellation, it's uncharacteristically light.
Correct. It would have to have been washed off.
When it went for its most recent expertization, did they use the XRF 6000 analysis on it or no?
No. And
It would be a good candidate for that because
yes,
maybe it
yes.
could tell whether the shilling slash actually crosses onto the stamp and whether the blobs and the target were applied at the same time, like dirt, as you suggested, or whether they were 2 distinct layers of ink or whether they were the same ink.
Yep. Agreed.
I'm curious to have to find out what this instrument.
Yeah, it's an XRF 6000. It's actually
XRF 6000.
No, it's a VS 8000 is what they have now.
no,
They
the newer,
upgraded from the
the newer
6000.
one. That's the newer version. But anyway, it's not just for philatelic purposes. It's a whole anti-counterfeit device. Governments use it, to authenticate government documents. And, if people present a false passport, they use that, to establish cases against people that they were fraudulently producing government documents. No, but it can tell a lot. It can tell like if you scan something with it, it can tell you in what order the layers of ink were applied to the paper. You know, which color ink was first, which was second, which was a lot of things it can.
Okay.
Yes, this is the instrument they have at the National Postal Museum in Washington. I was down there with a friend looking at some of our Greek stamps with this, and it has an amazing range of capabilities. You can get extreme magnification, light shining in various directions across the paper, so you can see the fibers of the paper. You can get minute analysis of the colors of the ink and all this sort of thing. It's all wrapped up into one machine that has all these capabilities.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah, so it would be able to tell, which cancel was applied first, the blobs or the target, or if they were the same ink, or if they were two different layers.
Okay, got it. So it's very high resolution optics and chemical analysis. Mhm.